This camera would capture a young man wheeling this blue bin down the street. Not something you see every day, right? This seemingly harmless footage would eventually give up a story of murder committed by the most unlikely person. Before revealing the details of this case, we would like to send our thoughts and condolences to the family and loved ones of Lindsay Burbick. Lancashire, located in the northwest of England, consists of flat coastal plains which rise to the hills of the Pennines in the east. Accrington, a town located in the Lancashire district, is full of Old English architecture and surrounded by a lush landscape. It's a fantastic place to get some fresh air and go for a walk to enjoy the stunning scenery. For 47-year-old Lindsay Burbick, this is exactly what she enjoyed doing. She kept an active lifestyle, routinely going out for walks on the nearby trails. On August 12, 2019, she would head out for one of these walks around 4 p.m., planning to arrive back home after only an hour. She had organized to have dinner with her daughter Sarah and her boyfriend, and would need time to prepare before their arrival. Lindsay would head to her favorite area, known by the locals as the Coppice. The Coppice is a wooded area with many trails that people often walk or bike along. While it's semi-remote, the frequency of people traveling along its paths have always made it feel safe for locals. Nothing had ever happened along these paths, so there was no concern for females walking alone. As Lindsay would continue her walk, she would pass another woman, who would come to be known later as Zoe Braithwaite. She was also out for a walk when she noticed the hooded figure behind her appearing to follow her. Something didn't seem right, so she started walking faster, only to realize the hooded figure behind her had also started walking faster towards her. This person would mimic her every move and appeared to be closing the distance, almost appearing to stalk the woman. Figuring that something wasn't quite right, she would start running from the stranger in a panic. After an exhausting run, she would look behind her, and the hooded figure appeared to have been gone. It had startled her so much she would immediately head to the police station and put in a report. At the same time she was logging this report, the hooded figure was sizing up his next target. 4:30 p.m., an hour and a half would pass, and Sarah would be standing outside of her mom's house, knocking, but getting no answer. She would try to ring her phone, which would also go directly to voicemail. Her mom was not the type to break plans when she had organized something in advance, especially with her daughter. At 6:30 p.m., as Sarah stood out in front of her mom's house still waiting for her, a suspicious young man would leave the Coppice and continue walking down Burnley Road. The footage would capture the young man, who appeared to have wet patches on his knees, almost like he'd been kneeling on wet grass. What could he have been possibly doing? The young man can now be seen wheeling a blue bin down the road towards the local cemetery. Sarah, meanwhile, had left her mom's house, but would continue calling despite getting no answer. She would contact her dad, Tim, and relay her concerns about her mom. Tim and Lindsay have both been married for 20 years, but had separated and gone their separate ways. Lindsay and Tim were still close, however, as they shared 2 children together. Both father and daughter would return to Lindsay's house with a spare key at 11:45 p.m., figuring that she may have had a medical episode. But inside, she was nowhere to be found. Her car was still parked out front, and nothing was missing from the home. Sometime just after midnight, Tim would contact police and report Lindsay missing.
Lancashire Police, how can I help?
Hello, me ex-wife seems to have gone missing. The phone was off. The car's there. Nobody's just been over to her house now.
Has she done anything like this before?
No.
Authorities would try and trace her movements and were aware that she had gone for a walk in a Coppice. Lindsay was a popular person. Having worked in the local education system with special needs children at the local primary school, she had touched many people's lives, and those people would hear she was missing and offered her time to look for her. A search would begin of the surrounding area, involving volunteers from many different backgrounds as well as law enforcement. Initially, nothing would be found, But police would find CCTV footage of Lindsay that they would release to the public. A week would pass by without any information of where Lindsay had gone. It was almost like she had vanished off the earth. August the 24th, 2019, 12 days after Lindsay's disappearance, a man by the name of Morgan Parkinson was walking his dog. They would pass by the Accrington cemetery when the dog would pull the leash out of his hands, running towards a patch of foliage. He would go over to check on what the dog was doing, and upon getting closer, was hit with the foul smell of death. Upon closer inspection, he could see a naked body wrapped in plastic, with some loose branches attempting to conceal it. He would contact authorities, who would quickly descend on the location. What was a missing persons case now became a case of murder. The body would be transported immediately for an autopsy to be performed. There was evidence to suggest that someone had attempted to cut Lindsay's right leg off with a saw. Deep cuts were observed, with marks on her tibia bone from the teeth of the saw blade. It was summarized that whoever did this was trying to dismember the body, but was not able to accomplish the task. Though the body was badly decomposed by this point, damage to the neck was observed, consistent with a crushing force which could have indicated the cause of death. Detectives would find a yellow-handled saw and a pair of green gloves nearby to where Lindsay was found. Lindsay's blood would be found on the outside of the gloves, but on the inside was the DNA of the suspected killer. Also close by, a pair of Skechers running shoes were located inside of a blue plastic bag confirmed to be Lindsay's. Bizarrely, the soles of the shoes had been cut off and thrown into a nearby dumpster. A blue wheelie bin was located which had Lindsay's hair and DNA inside of it. Police would initially look at Lindsay's ex-husband Tim Burbick as the prime suspect.
I remember them taking fingerprints off us all and DNA samples off us all.
So obviously the police were asking me the questions because I'm the ex-husband. So like I say, you'd have to be a fool not to think that you're being looked at, which they were.
But after providing his DNA and an alibi for the time Lindsay went missing, he was quickly eliminated as a suspect from the investigation. Police would now look over the CCTV footage and would discover something they had missed earlier. A young male would pull a blue wheelie bin down the coppice, the same looking blue bin they had found near the crime scene. He appears to wheel this bin in plain sight, past other walkers who take no notice of the individual. Sometime later, the same man is captured on video leaving the cemetery, but without the blue bin, and was then captured leaving the area. Police would release the footage to the public in hopes that someone could identify the young man, and they didn't have to wait long. A mother and father would walk into a local police station and name their son as the person seen on the CCTV footage. This would be 16-year-old Rocky Marciano Price, named after the well-known boxer. Rocky was a kid who had suffered learning difficulties, being diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and was put in a specialized school. His teachers would comment that he barely spoke, and he would struggle with most learning tasks. He had never shown any aggression towards any teachers or other students, and often kept to himself. At home, he would mostly play computer games, enjoying shooting things. He had never been arrested, or had any trouble with police previously. Suddenly, he found himself as the prime suspect in a murder case. The footage would show Rocky slowly walking towards the coppice, with not a care in the world. He would take the blue wheelie bin, dispose of Lindsay's body, and casually walk away as if nothing had ever happened. From the reports earlier that Zoe Braithwaite had made, it appeared as if he had been stalking the path looking for a victim. Lindsay, sadly, would be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Rocky didn't know her, and had never met her before, even though they lived only 3 minutes away from each other. Police would question Rocky, who would deny having done anything to Lindsay. His parents would also jump to his defense, claiming their son was innocent. After days and days of questioning, Rocky would eventually come up with a story that a stranger had offered him a large sum of money to dispose of a body for him. He would claim he had never met the man before and had not seen him or spoken to him since. The man had told him after the deed was done, he would be able to collect the money in the coppice, where he had first met him. Police obviously didn't buy this outlandish story and would charge him with murder. Rocky Price would eventually be sent to trial, where a jury would take only 3 hours to deliver a verdict of guilty. That would put an end to this case. Or would it? On social media, footage would surface of a man claiming that he was the one that took Lindsay's life. Rocky's defense lawyers would argue that the footage meant he couldn't be guilty. The case would be put down as a mistrial due to this new evidence. After police investigated it further, it was found to be fake, likely uploaded by a member of Rocky's family. Rocky would again be brought to trial, with a jury this time taking 4 hours to come to the same verdict: guilty of murder. Justice Amanda Yip would make this statement. Why the defendant chose to kill Lindsay, only he knows. The evidence of the other woman, Zoe Braithwaite, demonstrates beyond doubt that Lindsay was not targeted for any reason other than that she was a lone woman. If it had not been her, it could have been someone else. This was the entirely random killing of a stranger. While thankfully such crimes are rare, they strike fear into communities. In my judgment, the defendant's mental disorders cannot in any way excuse or explain his actions. I have no doubt that he knew what he was doing when he killed Lindsay Burbick, and that he knew that killing her was terribly wrong. Rocky Marciano Price would be sentenced to a minimum of 16 years to life. There is a chance that he could be paroled on a license after 16 years if he's no longer deemed a risk to the public. The ruling didn't stop Rocky's mom from declaring in the courtroom, "He's my son, and he's innocent." To this day, they claim that Rocky was convicted purely on circumstantial evidence and that he didn't do it. Their argument was that because he has autism, it doesn't make him a murderer. All we know is that a mom tragically lost her life, and needlessly, for seemingly no reason at all. If you've been fascinated by this case, consider subscribing so you don't miss our next captivating deep dive into true crime. Channel memberships are also available by hitting the join button. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.